Good afternoon, my name's Stewart Lucas. I'm going to shout at you for the next probably 40 to 45 minutes about influencing policy. So my plan is, as I said, to talk directly at you for about 40 minutes and then I'm going to stop for questions and answers. What I would ask is that if we can do the presentation and then do questions rather than people ask questions as we go through. That's basically because I'm autistic, and being autistic, if you start asking questions, I will answer them, we will go off on a tangent and we may never get back to where we wanted to be. So unless you are interested in being down transatlantic time, something completely irrelevant, I'm going to say let's stick to the presentation and then let's do the questions afterwards. I'm also going to basically turn the chat off just because I find it slightly sort of distracting. So I won't be aware of anything to say in the chat until we finish. So if you want to shout at me, you know, if you need something there in chat, I'll deal with it at the end. Okay, next slide, please, Kat. Next slide, Kat, next slide.
Hold on, Stuart, one sec. There you go.
Excellent. Right. What I've been asked to talk to you about is about influencing policy, and specifically influencing policy outside of formal meetings. The reason I've been asked to do it is probably because the person they wanted wasn't available, but also secondly, because this is what I do for a living. My day job is I'm Mind's strategic lead here in GM, and my job spec and my job basic title and my job role is to influence mental health and wider policy in GM, and to ensure that it is contains and it is basically sort of connects with and conducive with Mind's vision of mental health. And Mind's vision of mental health is very much that a person with a mental health condition has the same rights, abilities and access to support and services as a person without a mental health condition. And so my job is to embed and ensure that vision sits here in GM, and I do that full time. So I don't run an organisation, I don't have a staff team, I am basically me on my lonesome doing that influencing. It's what I do. Before that, I was the CEO of Lancashire Mind, and I influenced there, and we were one of the first minds to become a strategic as opposed to a delivery organisation. So we made a very clear decision, my board and myself, that there is around 1.8 million people in Lancashire, meaning those with a mental health condition are going to be around the 300 to 400,000 mark, and simply us providing services wasn't going to change the world, wasn't going to change people's experience around mental health. But if we influence Lancashire Care Foundation Trust and we change the way they worked, and we influence the way that the different local authorities worked, and we changed that, we could actually make a difference to people's lives. So we became a strategic influencing body. And again, as a CEO, I went out and I influenced, is what I did. And then before that, I worked in London, and I basically was chief executive of Interactive, which was a disability equality in sport charity. And basically we had the contract to deliver a Paralympic legacy for the Olympic Games. And as part of that, my job was to be Boris's Paralympic expert, and to sit alongside Boris when he was Mayor of London, and ensuring that the legacy for the Olympic Games included a legacy for disabled people. And again, that was all about influencing. That was all about changing people's perceptions. That was all about getting our ideologies across into plans. So influencing strategy and changing people's perception is what I have done for the last 20 years of my career. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to run you through what I think are the top 10 tips. Sadly, I can't get the audio to work, otherwise I would have the Alan Freedman Toddle Pops music playing in the background. But these basically are the 10 things that I believe that is a secret to success when influencing. And the first of them is one sitting there. It all starts with a vision. It all starts with you having a clear view of what you are articulating. So next slide, please, Kat.
There's just a slight delay, so just bear with.
Okay. Yeah, three really important things there. So what I've learned from doing this is I've had success when I'm very clear on what I am trying to do. What am I trying to achieve? What is the thing I'm trying to change? What is my narrative? What is the story I'm trying to tell? My experience of policy change and my experience of trying to drive that change is if you are doing it on a vague, we want to basically make a difference to people's lives. If you are doing it from a perspective of, oh, I want to have more money for my organization, I want to grow my organization, that doesn't work. You need to be very clear, what am I trying to achieve? So in London, we had a very clear vision of we wanted to basically ensure that the participation, the non-participation level of disabled people in sport was the same as the non-participation level of non-disabled people. We wanted to level the playing field. That was it. And we could prove there was a need and we could prove there was going to change because it showed that around sort of 1/3 of non-disabled people weren't participating in sports, but 2/3 of disabled people weren't. So boom, immediately we had the statistics in monochrome to prove there was something we were trying to change. Same in Lancashire. What we were trying to do was create a county of mental well-being, because we could show that Lancashire had one of the lowest, if not the lowest, mental well-being level through the mental well-being index in the UK. And we were trying to bring Lancashire from the bottom to the top. Bang. That was our narrative. That was what we were trying to do. And you need to know that narrative. You need to be able to push that narrative. That you are selling a story. Your life is then just one big elevator pitch. But the real clear thing is then to know very clearly what you are trying to change. Okay, next slide, please. But in this is a full-time job. So, don't kid yourself that influencing is something that can be done on the side or a bit there. It is a full-time job. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes investment. So when I was CEO of both Interactive and CEO of Lancashire Mind, we designed the organisation in a way that actually allowed me as a CEO to go off and do the influencing, to be external focused, and meant we had people back at the ranch running the organisation. It is really hard to run an organisation, supervise people, bring in funding, and actually do proactive influencing and policy change. It is really difficult, being very honest with it. And actually, both those organisations, we organised it, so actually I didn't have to worry about how the staff team were operating back at the ranch. There was another member of staff as an operations manager who dealt with that allowed me to go out and be proactive. Next slide, please, Kat.
On its way, hopefully.
Is it worth me sharing it myself, Kat?
No, done it. There you go.
Got it. Right. Okay. You will need to put the time in. Blaze advice on it. This doesn't happen overnight. This doesn't there, and you will need to be omnipresent. One of the ways that we managed it in basic London was the fact that I went out there and I went and stood on every platform that I could get. I went to every byway, highway. I went to an opening of toilets. I literally went to an actual opening of toilets. I went to the opening of the accessible toilet at City Hall and spoke there. I took every invitation to speak, and I spoke and I said the same thing. I had a stop speech and I made that speech and I did that. I was omnipresent. And that was one of the reasons that we got the traction behind it, because people heard it and they heard it again and they heard it again and they heard it again. People don't listen to you until you get to the third time. First time people hear things, it tends to go through one ear and then the other ear. Second time, it starts to stick. You really only make a difference to people on the third time of them hearing it. And that omnipresent thing is so important. You actually have to get out there and go into that. Expecting to be able to influence by just staying where you are and not going out to people doesn't work. The mountain, Muhammad doesn't come to the mountain. The mountain has to go to Muhammad. And you also need to kiss a lot of frogs. So one thing I've learned with this is you go down a lot of blind alleys. You will go down, you'll end up in a lot of completely meaningless meetings. You will end up with a number of meaningless relationships. But you have to do that to find the important relations. You do not find that point of influence straight away. You do not find that person that actually unlocks what you want to do straight away. There is an awful lot of Kevin Bacon. There is an awful lot of having to meet somebody who then connects you with somebody, who then connects you with somebody, who connects you with somebody. And that takes time. It takes work. It basically takes to actually go out there and basically do the foot thing. My life at the present moment is just sitting in meetings. I log on to my computer at 8 o'clock. I go into a meeting, I do another one, I do another one, I do another one. Some of them are really important and actually there. Some of them are not, but all of them play their part because they're all part of my wider influencing strategy. And I need to be in all of them. And I would really say that there is, if you're doing this, you have to go down some, I said, blind alleys. You cannot assume a meeting is not important until you've been there. And actually, there may be some meetings in where actually the importance of it is the fact that you're being seen there, the fact that you're being seen to connect, and that's it. Okay, next slide, please, Cam. Another thing about it, you need to be organisationally agnostic. In a lot of ways, when policy changing, what you are changing is you're changing the way things work. You are changing an ideology. You are trying to get an organisation to change the way that they do it. Simply pushing the reason you need to do it is because your organisation needs funding or your organisation needs better positioning will not get you anywhere. So this is what we talk a lot about, the begging bowl mentality. Simply going to a commission and saying, I need money because we need to deliver this, doesn't actually get you anywhere. What you need to do is stand back from your actual organisation and actually think about that vision, that sort of achievement that I spoke about. What actually is that wider achievement and that wider community thing? That is actually how you get places. Next slide, please, Kat. Basically, blatantly self-beneficial behaviour will get spotted a mile off. So it's really very much about actually thinking about that wider picture, that shared collective impact. That is all really important. That's how you do it. So as an example, I spend a lot of my time influencing the way that the Health and Social Care Partnership basically spends its money in the VCSE. I've had to earn my spurs in this. I've had to earn my spurs by not sitting there every time and saying, give it all to Mind, give it all to the 5 minds. The fact that actually I sit there, I advise, I point out, and actually I'm doing it on a wider perspective. I'm doing it based on my knowledge of the projects that I work in there, and actually doing it on that agnostic thing, i.e. I'm not recommending everyone and money goes to the mines. And actually I've had to earn that, and I've had to earn that right to sit there and actually make those decisions. And I've done that by proving that I'm doing this on an independent and agnostic way, as opposed to just thinking about the organisation that employs me. And that is key, absolutely key, when you are doing influencing, the fact that they are not seeing you there just to feather your own nest. They're seeing you there to actually make a difference to the wider community. Next slide, please, Kat. And also that same thing, don't assume the VCSE have a monopoly on care. When working with the system and when working with structures that we're trying to influence, we sometimes make a misapprehension or a miscomprehension that actually only we care, that actually we've got the views and the sort of and basically the needs of the community in our hearts. The system doesn't care. The system's not interested. The system's just interested in its own, feathering its own nest. The system's just interested in this wider thing. The system doesn't care. That isn't true. Some of the most, I would say, radical thinkers, some of the most caring, and some of the most absolutely infatuated with change and making a difference to the people of here in Greater Manchester sit within the system. The system does absolutely care. Sometimes it has its hands tied because it's a system. Sometimes basically it is stipulated by what national says it needs to do or what it's trying to do, but the system does care. The system, actually at the end of the day, wants to make a difference to people's lives. Next slide, please, Cats. Everyone goes to work for the same reason. Everybody I've met in the system wants to change the world. Nobody's interested in the status quo. Nobody is interested in basically just maintaining the way things always are. Everybody I have come across wants to make this a different world. And actually it's about capturing that, it's connecting that, it's finding those champions, it's finding those who have got a shared view on it. And I did that in London. I managed to basically very early on capture the heart of Simon Cooper, who was the Mayor's Commissioner for Sport. And very early on, we shared a shared passion for how we increase the inclusivity of it. And actually, once I had basically managed to connect it with him, then we started making change. So you will find people that actually will share your vision, that will share your passion, that will share your belief in this needs to change. You need to go and find them, but they are there. Same when I was doing the mental well-being work in Lancashire. We basically located, so where were the key thinkers? And those became directors of public health. And there were a number of directors of public health that we really then actually realized that we had a shared mission with. They also believed this. Those people are there in the system. You need to work, you need to find them. It takes a while, but actually do not sit there and think, oh, we're not going to find anyone in the system that shares our vision, because you will. Next slide, please, Kat. And the other side of that is be prepared to muck in. My experience with working with the system, being part of the system, being really embedded in the system and trying to change the way the system thinks is you need to show that you are prepared to be part of what they are doing. Don't, as it says here, don't feel you've got to stay in your box. Don't feel you have to stay within your specific area, because actually they don't want you that. They want you to be part of it. They want you to connect into it. They want your expertise in it. Change is achieved by being part of a wider agenda. So as an example, I'm fully immersed in the amount of stuff here. I've been part of the vaccine work. I've been part of the hospital discharge work. Both of those don't really fit into mine's remit of mental health and mental health there. But actually what I have found by being part of that, I am showing that as Mind, we want to be part of the solution. We want to be working with that. The system is interested in you coming in and helping across the board, as opposed to just sitting in your box. So actually be prepared to muck in. Be prepared to say, okay, well, how do I get involved in this? How do I get involved in this? Actually, the system is trying to change the world. It is trying to make the world better for its basic constituents, whether it's constituents here in GM being the Greater Manchester, when I worked in Lancashire, whether it be the Lancashire population, I worked in London, it's population of London. It's trying to make the world better for that. And actually, it wants your help on that wider perspective. Don't feel you've got to sit in your box, because if you sit in your box, you may well not be actually seen as being a part of that change, a real partner in that change. you say, well, actually, they're only interested in their own little bits. And actually, what I've learned is when I've been working with leaders and working to change people's perceptions, wanting to actually muck in and be part of the wider work makes you really, seen as someone who actually wants to be part of this change. Okay, next one, please, Kat. Be memorable. And a lot of these people that you're trying to influence and you're trying to change and you're trying to basically get to think differently will be talking to lots of other people that talk about that. They will be basically, the system is always trying to influence the system, and they will be in lots of meetings and they will come across lots of people and they will forget lots of those people. If you are trying to change and influencing people, one of your biggest one of your biggest basically weapons that you have in your arsenal is the ability to be memorable. I am an incredibly passionate, slightly quirky, slightly different. I'm sat here in an Avantasia t-shirt. I'm not wearing a shirt and tie. I'm sat here in a basically German power metal t-shirt. I'm sat here in my yellow room. The reason I sit in the yellow room and the reason I wear heavy metal t-shirts up there is because that gets you remembered. So people sit in a meeting with that going, oh yeah, there was a guy in basically a Mastodon or a Cannibal Corpse or a Cradle of Filth t-shirt. There was the one in the yellow room. They are all ways of getting yourself remembered. And next slide, please, Kat. There is nothing wrong with being a grenade chucker. In fact, they are expecting within meetings the VCSE to be the grenade chucker. They are expecting you to be the one that comes in with a different view, because that's the reason you are there. If they wanted someone to come in with the identikit system answer or the identikit system way of thinking, they would have somebody from the system there. The bit they talk about the VCSE is the fact that we think differently and they want that. That's why you are there. So do not feel bad about thinking differently. Do not be the one about connecting in there. And actually, the other advice I would always give is use humor, use relevance. I pride myself in being irreverent. I pride myself in being humorous. I pride myself on being a bit quirky. A lot of that is actually an act. It is a way of being remembered. I proudly wear my autism on my sleeve because, again, it's a way of being remembered. It's a way of being connected. When I'm in meetings, back when we used to do meetings, I don't wear white shirts. If I will wear a shirt and tie to a meeting, but I will wear a black shirt. Always wore a black shirt. And that is basically because I sit there and in NHS meetings and look at this whole basic just field ahead of me of people in white shirts and blue ties. That's the NHS uniform. That's what they all wear. How do you get remembered? You wear a black shirt. In fact, I have a monomath who are a Swedish melodic death metal shirt, which actually says a monomath in nice little sort of black monochromes embroidered on it. I even wear a heavy metal t-shirt to a meeting, and that is a way of getting remembered. There is nothing wrong with sticking out from the crowd. Sticking out from the crowd is the way that people remember who you are. So always be thinking about how are those bits they're memorable. So I'm not advocating that you all go in clown costumes or basically sit there and basically drop F-bombs just to be remembered, because there is a level of this. But actually there is a way of how do you make your point? How do you make your point in a way that their passion is hugely important? People remember passion. People remember the fact that you are talking about this from your heart. That really does resonate. So be memorable. One of the key things with how do you influence that is people remember who you are. Okay, next one, please, Kat. And there's also some clearly the power of transferable skills. So basically, when you are influencing, it is really easy to get basically overawed by the system. It's really easy to get overawed by the fact that everybody, knows what they're talking about. It's really easy to go, well, I don't know why I'm in this meeting. I don't know why I'm here. I know nothing about it. Remember that you have transferable skills. You are an expert in your area. That's why you are a leader in the VCSE, and you can transfer that. Kat, next slide, please. The system uses big words, as I said. The system seems very sure of itself. That does not mean you know any less in what you're doing. That does not mean that what you're talking about has any less worth. That does not mean you cannot be part of that conversation. You have transferable skills. So as an example, I was talking to a colleague last week who said he'd been, he runs a counselling and therapeutic service with an organisation I work with. He'd been invited to a session on gambling. And he's like, I know nothing about gambling. Why the hell am I going to this? I know nothing about it. What difference can I make? And my line to him was say, you may know nothing about gambling, but what you know about is obsessive behaviour. You know about basically how a person can basically get caught in a loop where they become more obsessive and obsessive. You know about behavioural change. So you know about actually how you can support somebody to be addressing this behaviour, to actually shift that behaviour to this. Don't you? He's like, yes, I know about both of those. I say, right, and you also then understand the impact that basically poverty has on a family. You understand the impact that a person's mental health condition can have on a family. Those are all things that sit under problem gambling. They are all areas. Just because you don't know about the overarching thing, actually you will be an expert on the structures. I've learned that, I'm now sitting as a non-executive director on Stockport Foundation Trust. And for a while I sat there thinking, why the hell am I here? I know nothing about running a foundation hospital. But actually what I do know about is budgets. I was a CEO. I know about governance. I know about how you ensure that lived experience, personal lived experience, has connections into structures. I know all about that. And all of those are coming up in the meetings that I'm in. So I think the real thing I wanted to just push for this one is do not get overarched by the big words the system uses. The system loves big words. The system does seem very sure of itself. But actually, that doesn't mean you know nothing else. Your experts and your experience will be relevant. Alexa, next one, please. And most people are making it up as they go along. Let's really be honest on this. We sit there and we listen to people and it sounds like they know what they are doing. It is not true. I spent a number of years working around the Olympic Games, working when Boris was Mayor of London, and he just gave this very clear thing that he knew what he was doing. At no point did that administration, or in fact any political administration I've ever worked with, know what they were doing. They are making it up as they go along. They are just sometimes very good at it. They're very good at basically making it look like they know what they're doing. But in the most place, people are making it up as they go along. That's life. I remember when I became first the CEO of an organisation, and I had this view that every CEO was so clear on what they were doing. And then I became a CEO and realised that I hadn't a clue what I was doing. And actually every decision I was making, I was having to make a value call based on my thing. And that was how I did it. It was a case of making it up as you went along. Kat, next slide, please. And don't be fooled. I use Beatles. This is my Beatles analogy. It's working on the ideas of the Beatles. Paul, John, George, Ringo. So you've got Paul, John, and George, who are some of the greatest musicians this world has ever seen. And then you've got Ringo, who probably isn't even the best Thomas the Tank Engine narrator in the Beatles. So you've got that. And so, there must have been a really difficult thing for it. So you had George, you had Paul, and John, who were just these amazing musical monoliths. And then you had Ringo, who essentially was the spotty kid that had just hung around with them and just had basically managed to get famous on their coattails. And I talk about, in being in meetings and feeling like the Ringo. because I get, I sit in meetings with Sarah Price, who's the chair of the Untitled Partnership. I sit, with all these, with Andy Burnham. I sit with all the, with Graham Lees, all these people, and me. And I sit in these meetings and I talk about, I'm the ringer. Everybody else is there, and there's me. Actually, in most rooms, everybody is the ringer. And just because a person has an increased, has a high level or a high job and knows that, doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're doing. In my experience, most people don't know what they're doing. They are making it up as they go along. And actually, once you suddenly realize that basically that sort of mist, it's a bit like the Wizard of Oz, that curtain suddenly comes back. And you realize most people are just doing it. And actually, when you're in a meeting, you're all just making it up as you go along. You're all just working out there. I've been in a community cell meeting this morning, and we're just working our way through this. With COVID, no one's ever been through this again. This is a whole once in a generation thing. We are all making this up as you go along. Okay, next one. Okay, and part of being in meetings and part of being part of this is knowing when to speak and knowing when to shut up. And that's the one thing I've really learned. So instead of on the community coordination cell, I know when to come in and make a contribution. I know actually when to basically push them through. But I also know when actually it's worth me just stepping back. But actually, if I try to get in this conversation, I'm probably going to make a fool of myself. And actually, it's about that for me is the art. Knowing when actually your contribution is really going to make a difference, and knowing when your contribution is really going to basically look like you're trying, but like Shed 7, trying to basically keep up with Oasis. Really. Next slide, please. Gap. See, contribution is about quality, not quantity. So it is very much about actually what are you making a difference with your piece of work. There will be some discussions that will go over your head. That's life. I live with them. So I sat on a small working group that was run by John Rouse when he was in post, and I was used to the fact that there were some conversations that just went whoosh over my head. And there were some conversations where actually I could contribute to. And I knew, and you live with that. You know when I do that. The art is knowing when your contribution is valid and when it is superficial. Okay, Kat, next one, please, which is our final one. And our top 10, so our number one top tip, so our basically sort of the hot top 40 is there are no conspiracy theories, just cock-ups. I've learned this. I've learned this working with Boris. I've learned this working in Lancashire. I've learned this working here. There are no conspiracy theories. We sit there and we love conspiracy theories. In fact, conspiracy theories are basically the modern version of old wives' tales, if I can use that there. They're things we create. I come from Norway, and in Norway, we created the idea of trolls because we wanted to basically describe why things happen. Why did the milk go sour? Or the milk went sour because the troll made it go sour. Why did the person disappear into the bog and never come back again? That's basically because the sirens induced him to go into the bog. That's how he disappeared. That's how you explain things. And conspiracy theories are our way of trying to explain things. And the actual sort of truth is there usually is no rhyme or reasons. There's usually just stupidity. There's usually just basically things happen just because they happen. Chaos and all of those bits and pieces. There usually is no connection of it. My favourite thing of that, so the whole moon landings. So this whole conspiracy theory about the fact that we never actually went to the moon and it was all staged. So you actually look at that and deconstruct that, and you think, okay, the amount of work that you would have to go to stage that, the amount of people that you would actually have to pay off, the amount of people you would have to make sure never spoke about it, all those crowds who are potentially there. Actually, it's easier to put someone on the moon than actually it is to fake going to the moon. And this is the thing about conspiracy theories. They're lovely. They're all, I love the idea of them because they're all hopelessly. They're never true. There is no big plan to sell off the NHS. because they're not organised enough to do that. There is no big plan by the government to basically, this whole COVID rubbish, this whole idea of, oh, there's a big plan for the government to do this. No, they're not organised enough. They're not doing that. You know, I worked with Boris for 7 years. He couldn't organise his way out of a teapot. He's great about standing there and talking there. But actually, at the end of the day, they're making mistakes all over the place because they're making stuff as they go along. Because that's how politics works. That's how structures work. There are no conspiracy theories. Kat, next slide, please. Nobody is intentionally not trying to include us. So, you know, we as a VCSE, we get very hot up on the idea of, oh, we're not being included. This is going on without us. No, they've just forgotten. They just haven't done it. Nobody is doing this on purpose. There are no dark, sinister plots up there. There are no small cables of people sat in a room making things. They're not clever enough. They're not organised enough to do it. So one of the key things about remembering in all of this, that actually things happen usually basically because of stupidity, incompetence. They're not including us on purpose. They are not pushing us out the way because they want to have this super state which doesn't include the VCSE and all of those bits and pieces. Not happening because they just don't have the imagination. They don't have the connection of it. It's just life. And you just have to live through. They will sometimes be those incompetencies because at the end of the day, as humans, actually, sometimes we're not very good at our jobs. There are days where I'm not very good at my jobs. We all do that. That's life. Okay, Kat, next slide, please. So, final thoughts. I've shouted at you for the last 40 minutes, which was the plan. Final thoughts from me about how you influence, how you connect. I think the thing for me is clarity. Be very clear what you are trying to do. If you are not clear on your message. So if you look at some of the most biggest and the most, real things that really made the difference is when that basically sort of when that message is so clear. So imperial cancer, we want to end cancer now. And it's BCC, we want to add child poverty now. It's a clear, very clear message. They may not actually achieve it. I don't think imperial cancer has any view that it will actually end cancer tomorrow, but that's still its message. It's the same thing with when we were trying to create mental well-being for all in Lancashire. We want Lancashire to be the county of mental well-being. Actually, we had no basically sort of actually aspects that would ever actually happen, but that was our message. That's how we pushed through. That clarity, proliferation, get out there, talk to people again and again and again. Change is doesn't happen in an afternoon. Change doesn't happen with one person. You don't bring down a government with one person going and shouting at the sort of at the House of Parliament saying, right, I've shouted, but nothing's changed, so I'm going home again. Actually, it happens with voice and voice and voice. It happens over time. It happens with momentum, like proliferation. You make changes because you keep pushing at it. You keep pushing and pushing and pushing. You say it again and again and again, and then other people hear other people saying it. And that's how we achieved the changes we did in sport for disabled people in London. Because actually, my cries, and one of the clear things that we changed was sport for disabled people stopped being seen as a supply issue, i.e. we need lots and lots of wheelchair basketball clubs, and became a demand issue. We need to ensure that disabled people feel being active is for them. And that changed because it was me saying it again and again and again. And then it became me and some other people saying it again and again and again. And then it became lots of people saying it again and again and again. And then it sort of became true because everybody was saying it. And that's how you get it, proliferation. You push and you push and you push. You do not do this overnight. And I think that's one of the real clear things on this thing. This takes time. And you will have days where you grow successes, but you have days where actually you come back going, I haven't changed a thing. I had a day about a year ago where I was speaking to a very senior person in the system who just turned to me and said, no, it's never going to happen. We're never going to agree to this. And actually, you will have days where you just basically feel deflated. And actually, you feel, do you know what? Why the hell am I doing this? What is the point of this? I say to my wife quite often, do you know what? Why do I do this? Why can't I sit in Tesco's and just sit there and scan things in Tesco's? Because that will be a much easier thing to do, much more proactive thing to do. Why do I sit there just trying to tell the system it should change? And my wife basically says to me, if you went off and worked in Tesco's, the first couple of days you enjoy it, then by the third day you will have basically done time and movement thing, worked out how you would be productive. By Thursday you would have created a plan for how the whole system could be more productive across Tesco's, and by Friday you would be fired because basically you would have started started working all these strategic plans which are none of your business. And actually we do it because, in the final bit here, we're passionate about it. And that's the thing for me I've learned on this, is what the system responds to and what the system loves and what the system connects into is passion. It absolutely thrives on that passion because the system is passionate. That's why people go into politics. We sit there and we deride politicians and we deride senior leaders. The reason that they all work incredibly hard. And the reason they work incredibly hard is because they care about what they do. We may not agree with their politics. We may not agree with that, but they are passionate about what they do. That's why they are there. That's why they put the hours in, because they truly believe that they can make a difference. They truly believe that they can change the world. And that's what they respond to. They respond to passion. They respond to people that actually feel passionate about it. And your biggest armory in this is passion. Because if you're not passionate, how the hell do you expect other people to be passionate about what you're trying to do? And that's me. Kat, last slide. That's me. I've been Stewart Lucas. I am available for bar mitzvahs, summer seasons, and children's parties. And I will quite happily take any questions, insults. Yeah, that's good.
Stewart, there's quite a few questions in the chat if you want to unlock your chat now.
Okie dokie, brilliant. Okay, are you able to run through them? I can't quite see them. The cat and shout them out to me. I'll deal with them.
Hold on. Chat. Colin's written, I get the being present when your diary is full. How do you choose where to be and what to drop?
I would basically say a lot of it is about trial and error. It is about basically, I work on the idea I go to every meeting once. There are some meetings I actually realise, no, that is completely useless. I'm never going to go to that one again. But there are some meetings I actually want to go there for a while. It's a lot of that is about your diary being elastic. It is trial and error. A lot of this is trial and error, work up there, but also it's about the best use of your time. And that's the one thing. So when I was CEO of Lancashire Mind, and when I was CEO of Interactive, it was all about what is the best use of my time. Is the best use of my time basically running supervisions with staff back at the ranch? Is my best use of my time basically working out there? Or is the best use of my time that we employ a operations manager to do that, and I use my time to go and do that strategic influencing? And actually it's about, what I call horses for jockeys. There are things I'm good at, and there are things I'm atrocious at. And actually doing that day-to-day administration of being a CEO, I'm pretty rubbish at, to be honest. I'm trying to remember when to put in the charity commission returns, trying to remember when to get that, trying to write that bit, trying to remember when to get that bit into government and that bit into there. I'm trying to remember when grants have come in, or when I'm going to put my grant reports in. I'm actually pretty rubbish at that. Stick me in a room with some senior leaders and I can sit there and I can basically be passionate for everyone. Sit me with basically a list of funding monitoring reports to go into. I'm not particularly good at that. So it's actually about working out where are your skill sets, who's better at doing what in your organisation. Because a lot of the time we basically put people on the wrong horses. We actually say, well, you go and do that, because that's, this whole self-admining idea. Actually, I really always rally against that because I'm rubbish at it. And actually it probably takes me double the time of doing it. So actually, why don't we have specialised people who can do that so I can get on and do with the bit that I'm good at?
Thank you.
There's a question from Davina about you're doing for the collective, but can you ensure that others are not feathering their own nests? I think there's got to be a level of trust there, you know, to be completely honest, but there's also a level of falling by the wayside. Those who are trying to feather their nests will in the end fall foul because the system is not interested. The system is interested in those who are making difference. Now, there may well, I'm sure we can all point at saying, well, Nigel over there, he's trying to feather his own nest, and Jonathan over there. Actually, in my experience, most of those, you know, will fall by the wayside. And this is a level of actually the moral high ground. This is a level of actually what, you know, what works for you, what connects in with you, and actually that being agnostic is what I have found is the way forward. It sometimes is lonely. You know, the high ground will always be a lonely place to be, but actually it is the right way of doing it. It is the one that you want to do. In the end, it pays a dividend on it. Collins asked again about changing world. Do you feel the work you do to develop relationships around shared vision can replicate in social media such as LinkedIn? Yes, I think we've shown that you don't actually need to leave the house to change things. You know, we've shown that there. I think it's still time. And I think it's that point that I said before about pontification, getting out there, putting the shoe leather in, putting the time in, and all of that is important because that's how you do it. You just get out there, and you may do that from your computer. So I usually start work about 8 o'clock. I don't usually finish work till about 6, 7, and I'm working all that time. And, you know, I have conversations with people who sit there and say, well, when do you do your real work? This is my real work. And actually, sometimes we almost see meeting going and making those connections and talking with people on Zoom and conversations. We almost see that as necessary evils. It's not the job. I know people will say, well, it's not my job. My job is to basically this. Actually, I see basically doing funding returns or trustee returns or having to just write documents. I see that as the unnecessary evil. That's the bit actually, if I could avoid never having to do again, I would. Because actually being at meetings, going out there, making those connections, that is the job. That is the job. And I think actually that's the shift. And so many people I've talked to have said, oh, you know, it just gets in the way. They get in the way of me doing your job. Actually, they get away and do your job, you're not doing your job. Because actually being at those meetings, making those connections, positioning yourself, that is your job. That is what you need to do because we're about influence. We're about changing the world. There's some going through there, slides coming out. Gary was asking about frustrating the last 5 years as the ex-military have not looked. I was a high need group, never actually thought about how I have influenced the change, so explained to me. I thought, thank you. Collaborative people find each other. Lots of nice comments. Excellent. Any other questions? I'm sure people can wave their hands and stuff. Anyone who questions, comments? Dee's got a hand up. Well, I think that's a hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Stuart. Thanks a lot for that. I think maybe like a lot of people, I sort of struggle with time as well. And something that you might have some advice on is kind of knowing, you know, what opportunities there are, like, you know, what's coming up in policy or what kind of big things are being discussed, you know, so that we kind of have an idea of I guess where to put our energy. I sort of find quite often that I'll see, you know, there's been this new manifesto launched or there's been this new roadmap for this thing, and you kind of find out about it once it's happened, and then you kind of think, oh, maybe I've missed the boat of influence in that. So yeah, I guess the question is kind of any advice about how to stay plugged into stuff that's going on in the early days so you've got a chance to be involved.
I think my first thing, I'm not just saying this because they're running the session, is to basically read the stuff that comes out from GMCBO, read the stuff that comes out from your local infrastructure organisations, because that's their job. Their job is to keep a view of what's actually happening. Their job is to keep that overview of it. And actually, you know, you will get the opportunity. You know, GMCBO run plenty of consultation events. They run plenty of those things, and go along to them. Because, you know, and this goes back to my thing about don't just sit yourself in a in a bubble of, okay, I work in, husky dog racing, so I'm only going to go to the consultation meetings which are about husky dog racing because I'm not interested in giraffe farming. That's somebody else's problem. Actually, go along to the giraffe farm, because actually it will connect across together, and in many ways it will sometimes be the same people that are going to them. I've sat in many really, really dull GMCBO consultation events, so no disrespect at all, Kat, but sat there going, my God, I'm never going to get this 2 hours back in my life. But what I have done is made connections with the with basically the GMCA person there running the session. And actually, next time somebody comes on, they email me directly and go, well, can I have your opinion on this? So actually, it's about building those connections. It's about building it there, but also just keeping an eye on more stuff. So GMCBO do regular bulletins. They do a social care bulletin that comes out, I think, is on a monthly basis. There is regular stuff going out there. That's your lifeblood, or starting to know what's going on, but then also getting yourself onto those connections. So getting involved in your locality VCSE groups, getting involved in the Pacific groups around different inclusion groups. The more you get involved, the more you hear about what's going on. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, as I said, my name is Stewart Lucas. As I'm available for bar mitzvahs, summer season, children's parties. Kat's got the slides and we'll be sending them out. I'm also quite happy for Kat to share my emails if anybody wants to ask any specific questions or personal questions or anything like that. But this has been a very, very enjoyable way of spending a Thursday afternoon. Thank you all very much. And thank you also for all the nice comments that are in the chat.